Patrick Touhey is a senior fellow at the Show Me Institute. And, of course, they're a Missouri-based think tank. He is set to join us here momentarily on KCMO Talk Radio. He wrote a really good piece in the Kansas City Star, and I want to talk to him about that. He also is calling out Black and Veatch and the city of Overland Park for some of what it has tried to do in railroading the taxpayers there. And Overland Park, of course, sadly, is going along with it. So Patrick Touhey joins us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. So let's start off with the stadiums before we get to Overland Park. All right. We knew that Kansas was going to extend the Star Bond deal. They did for the next 6 months. Your reaction is what?
So I heard Ty Masterson on your program several weeks ago saying that he didn't want to extend just to, kind of encourage the teams to waste everybody's time, but maybe they would extend for 90 days or a shorter period of time or something like that. And then I find out just a few days ago that the law says, well, they have to extend for a year. And so the leaders say, well, we'll extend for a year, but really they've only got 6 months. And what that tells me is that the leadership of the Kansas legislature didn't know what was in the bill they passed. They didn't know their own law. And that does not build confidence that these guys are going to be, serious negotiators.
So I know last week we talked about this and you criticized them for extending this whole deal. But when it comes to the why behind it, if you're Kansas and you don't have any pro sports team right now, and you say to yourself, well, we've waited this long, what's another 6 months? What would your argument be on the reverse side of that?
Well, you waited a year and the teams didn't take you seriously. And so, these guys know, Pete, they have to know that they're just being played to squeeze a better deal out of Missouri or to try to get even more out of Kansas. And if you kind of make the offer and you don't hear back for a year, the state should be like, you know what? We're going to have some spine. We're going to have some self-respect. And we're not going to let ourselves get played this way. But, of course, that's not what happened. And I imagine once the teams knew that they had the Star Bond offer, they kind of knew, you know what, these guys are suckers. We can wait the whole year and they'll extend. And that doesn't speak well of Kansas leadership.
Well, I totally understand those sentiments. I do. But on the flip side, if you're like, hey, this potentially brings a lot of revenue to the state, we don't get it right now. Having a spine is nice in theory, but it doesn't mean anything for us, because this opportunity will not present itself ever again. So, you know what? Let's kick the can down the road 6 months.
Okay, sure. But what that also tells me is that the offer you made a year ago at the Star Bonds wasn't sufficient. So that it wasn't good enough to get their interest for 12 months. You extend because now they just want to dig in and ask you for more stuff. And that kind of backsliding that you're describing, and again, I understand, well, what's the big deal of extending it for 6 months? Well, what you're telling the teams is, hey, man, everything is on the table. And you want to tweak the Star Bond deal a little bit, well, come and talk to us. You want to increase, develop a sales tax like Jackson County offered. Maybe we can talk. So it just shows that the legislature doesn't kind of respect their own rules and is telegraphing to the teams, we're willing to give up on little things. Maybe we're willing to give up on big things. And again, the teams, I suspect, knew this in advance.
Well, I think they knew, and they did very effectively, as I predicted and you predicted, play both sides of this thing very well. Right? I mean, they knew how to play both sides, and they played both sides, and they're getting exactly what they want out of this, which is buying themselves more time.
Right, and not just more time, like getting better deals. So, I was talking to a reporter earlier. One of my frustrations is that you and I are kind of, and everybody in Kansas City who's interested in this issue is kind of trying to figure out, well, what deal is better, and is what's the trade-off here for getting straight taxes versus getting a 70%, TIF basically from the Star Bonds. And what we don't know is any of the term sheets from the teams. What are they willing to spend? What do the Royals want to spend on a park versus what they're willing to spend on the bars, restaurants, and hotels that go around it? And we don't know any of that stuff. So it's sort of like, it's like The Bachelor baseball. The teams are lining up all their suitors, are getting them to expose every bit of themselves and what they're willing to offer, and the teams just sit back quietly, knowing what they have some sense of what they're willing to contribute, but they know they don't have to tell anybody. And at some point, they're dangling that rose in front of everybody, and all those people lined up are beclowning themselves, falling over themselves for this deal, which frankly is not going to be great for taxpayers. It may make you feel better. It may, make you feel pride, but regionally it's just a wash.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if you saw Patrick Touhey, Dave Helling in the Kansas City Star wrote a good piece about this. And one thing that he noted that I've said on this show the last couple of months here is that the Chiefs going to Kansas, one part of the equation that does not get enough attention here is that basically the price tag, of course, they've got to kick in 30% at least, right, on a new stadium. But maintenance, repairs, taxes, other costs, that's got to be all privately handled. And right now the Chiefs and the Royals have a pretty good deal in Jackson County where all that's covered basically by this sales tax. So I don't think that part of the equation is getting enough attention. Do you?
No, I think this is what I've been saying for more than a year now, which is the Star Bond offer isn't competitive exactly because, sure, they will return back to you income you generate at the site in order to defer the costs. But you don't start getting any of that money until your facility is built and open and you are hosting games. Whereas the free money from Jackson County is just day one, and it doesn't depend on your performance. It doesn't depend on your ticket sales. It doesn't depend on whether or not you're a good team or property manager. It's just free money, and you can use it apparently for whatever you want. So that's absolutely huge. And we get distracted by 50%, taxes for the stadium on the Missouri side or 70% on the Kansas side. But that free money from Jackson County was huge. I think Helling is exactly right. And it is the reason why I have been saying for a year now that the Kansas offer minus that free money is just not competitive.
All right, let's go to Overland Park, Patrick Touhey, where the Overland Park City Council has gone ahead and voted unanimously this week to approve a tax incentive for a new $1 billion project in Overland Park off 115th and Lamar. I know you wrote about this, and your opinion piece was titled in the Kansas City Star, Should Overland Park Fund Black & Veatch's Big Project? We know the answer is no from your estimation, but what's the biggest reason for the why behind it?
Gosh, there are so many. Well, I guess the first reason is Black & Veatch isn't even threatening to leave. Mayor Skoog said that on your podcast. So this is not a matter of, we've got to keep these jobs because they might go somewhere else, which, by the way, is usually a BS argument, but at least it's a threat. Black & Veatch is not even making that threat this time. So there's no reason why Overland Park should think that there's any urgency to helping Black & Veatch, which is a very wealthy company, build or improve their own headquarters. The second thing about this that's troubling for me is, in effect, you're telling Black & Veatch, we are going to give you public dollars to enter into the hotel, restaurant, property management market, giving you a huge advantage against people already in the hotel, bar, hospitality, hotel industry, because they have to pay taxes. And again, I don't see why that's a good deal for taxpayers. It certainly is a great deal for Black & Veatch, but if you own any kind of retail or business in that area, it's going to hurt you because you're going to be paying, in effect, to subsidize that development. And then the last thing is, Overland Park is a great market to invest in. What the leaders of Overland Park should be saying is, we have built a great foundation here for your business. Come here, build, invest. It's a great environment. We're not going to give you any special deals because we don't need to, because we've created a great environment.
But what about, I see the members of the city council on social media, and they're like, there's no risk to the city. There's no cash from the city. It's all just additional sales tax revenues for schools. And all these different things. They say the Blue Valley School District's going to get a massive windfall on new property taxes collected on the project. So why are they wrong?
Well, they're wrong because they're ignorant of history. Look, the Cerner project was supposed to give the Hickman Mills School District millions of dollars, and none of it happened. The Sprint campus was itself a huge deal years ago that was supposed to generate all that stuff, and we know what happened there. So again, if you've built a good environment, a good business environment, you don't need to subsidize people who want to develop there. Black and Veatch is perfectly wealthy enough to play by the rules you have set up for everybody. Why you want to carve out a special deal for them is nonsensical. It's counterproductive to your oath as a city council to deliver services to everyone. And then the threat is the next big developer that comes along isn't going to say, oh my gosh, Overland Park, thank you for building a great business environment. I want to invest. They're going to point to Black and Veatch and say, I want what they got, because that's what happens in Kansas City. And it is a trend that once Overland Park says, hey man, the books are open, we're going to give you whatever you want, businesses are going to ask for whatever they want. And the unanimous vote last night tells me that Overland Park, again, it goes back to the kind of stadium deals. Cities have to be able to say no. They've got to be able to have some self-respect. They've got to focus. I've been saying for years, it's my whole career, to say that cities have to develop a great business environment and then let businesses come in. Overland Park has done a great deal of that. Why they think they've got to pay people for the privilege of operating in Overland Park is, I don't understand, especially if there's not even the bogus threat of leaving.
Patrick Touhey, Show Me Institute on KCMO Talk Radio. We appreciate you, my friend. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. There you go. Good stuff.